Excel 2007, Basic Formulas. We're going to start from scratch by just doing some simple sums, some simple averages. We'll talk about what an absolute reference is and why in the world that could ever be the tool for you. We'll talk about the FX there. That is the insert function that abounds within Excel. There are tons and tons of formulas that can really help you to get the most out of your spreadsheets. And of course, Excel gives you examples, and it's not too difficult when you use this insert formula function wizard. We can also modify text with formulas. We can extract information. We can concatenate. We can clean up a whole bunch of junky text that we have maybe imported into our Excel spreadsheet. I'm also going to talk to you about the paste special so that you can have a formula but decide that you don't really want to use that formula anymore. Instead, you like the value that's displayed in that formula. I'll show you how easy it is to convert a formula from a formula right there into a value. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I have a spreadsheet here with my sales team performance. I have my sales personnel, the territory, and their totals for each quarter, how much they sold, how much they brought in to our organization. I'd like to do some totals. So I'm going to insert a new row here. To insert a row, the easiest way that I think is to select the whole row, right-click, and choose Insert. Now, this is what I want to do. I want to total this information here. I always like to put labels, East, total, so I know what I'm working with. And really, the quickest way to do this is the auto sum feature. And we've talked about this previously, but just because we're here in basic formulas, I want to get started from scratch. That's this sigma button here. If I click on that, it says, hey, is this what you're after? It sure is. So it's showing me also that the formula is equal sign sum. The range is C2 through C7. That's correct. So I can press enter on my keyboard, or I can click this check mark. Another way to auto sum would be to select the range that I want to auto sum and then click the auto sum button, and it just throws that sum in the first empty cell. Now I also have the auto sum over here on the formulas toolbar. It's right here. So I could click in this cell again, auto sum. Hey, is this the range that you want? It sure is. I can click this button again. So many different ways to do the auto sum, and of course I can auto fill that over. Notice how my pointer looks like a skinny black plus. If I just put it in the bottom right hand corner of the cell where I want to copy, I can click and drag, and it's going to automatically update. Notice if I click in this cell, my formula is F2 through F7. If I double click, it says, hey, this is the range that I summed. Awesome. That's the range that I summed. Okay. If you're in the middle of a formula and you click outside of it, it says, hey, sweet, okay, you want to update that formula? I'm good with that. Let's update. Oops, I didn't want to do that, so I can click this red X, which is cancel, or press escape on my keyboard. I'd like to have some totals here also, so I'll just type totals up here, press enter. I want to auto sum all this information also, so I can click and drag and select where I want my totals to go, press auto sum. It very quickly auto-summed it. And it shows me pound signs, so I can resize this column, and I can see all my totals. This, of course, is my total of all my totals. Let's double-click and see. It ended up totaling all these totals. If I wanted to change that to this, I'm going to press delete to move those items out of there. I can hit enter. It's the same value. I'm going to just make this look a little bit prettier. I'm going to press control so I can select this range. I'm going to go back to home, and I'll press B for bold. Now this stands out. You might have noticed that totals doesn't have a border at the bottom, so I can click that. Now everything's fresh and clean. I'll click save. All right, let's do some formulas the old-fashioned way without that auto sum button. I'm going to insert a row here. Notice I also have an insert command. I can choose to insert sheet rows. Just threw a row in there. Many different ways. Here are my north, I'll keep it the same consistency, I'll capitalize it all, north totals. Now I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way. Always, always, always with formulas, start with an equal sign. Equal, what am I summing? I'm going to sum Mary Kennedy. What do I use to add? Well, a plus. Plus Joseph, plus Frank plus Hyung plus Jason plus Gino. Whoops, I must have hit a minus. Whoops. I'm gonna change that to a plus. That looks good. I'll press enter, or I could click that check mark. All right. There's my formula here on the formula bar. Of course, I could double click again to see that formula. Or on your keyboard, you can press F2 to edit a cell. Doesn't have to be a formula. Here it's a formula, so I could edit my formula. I'll press escape. All right, I can now copy this over. I could copy it over through all of them, and notice it does a relative reference. It says, okay, I'm in column D. Now I'm going to sum column D, column E, column F. All right. Same thing here. I could copy down my auto sum. If I wanted to, do the autofill. I want to show you one more thing. When we clicked on these, remember our formula was equal sign sum, parenthesis, the range, closing parenthesis. So on my own, I could type in equal sign. I'm going to move my cursor out of the way. SUM, and it says, hey, look at all these formulas that I have that starts with a sum. Which one do you want? Well, I'm going to stick with sum. If I press the open paren, it says, all right, you've landed on sum. What do you want to do? I'm right here. I'm at number 1. That's telling me, well, you've got to add the first number of the range. I'm going to add these quarterly items together, so that would be C9. It is not case sensitive, by the way. C9. Range is indicated by a colon, F9. Need a closing paren to finish that off. That's the syntax. When I press enter, it's given me that value. Now, what if I try it again? Equal sign sum, open paren. Now this time I want C10, colon F10. I'm supposed to put a closing paren, but if I hit enter, it will figure that out for me. It said, hey, I know you're working on a formula. I know the syntax. This is relatively new to Excel. It's not new in 2007, but you used to get some errors thrown at you if you didn't have the syntax exactly right. That looks good. I'll press enter. Now you might have known earlier I had this little green triangle in the upper left-hand corner of this cell G8. When I click on it, it says, yep, you've got an error. When I click on this, it tells you, hey, this is your problem, inconsistent formula. What do you want to do? Do you want to copy the formula from above? Do you want help? Do you want to ignore this? Or do you want to just edit this in the formula bar? This is the formula bar. Or how about some of these error checking options? I'll tell you what. I don't want to copy the formula from above. I did a new formula because I just started from scratch. It really is the same formula. I just didn't copy it, so Excel thought, whoa, something's wrong here. I need to tell you. I'm going to ignore this error. Now that green triangle is gone. All right, so I can just copy this information down, and I can bold this information again. Select a range, press Control, select a range, and I can click B or Control B on your keyboard, bolds items. I always like to do keyboard commands because you do a lot of typing in Excel. Might as well just take advantage of having your hands on the keyboard. Control S for save. You can do some other features with that automated auto sum feature. For example, average or count numbers. So let's go ahead and grab the averages. I'll click this down arrow. I'll choose average, and it's saying, hey, are these what you want to average? Not exactly. I don't want to average my totals in there. C2 through F2. Enter. All right, there are my averages. You can copy these down. I can press copy. You can click here, and I can choose paste. It's going to paste these formulas down. Notice how it's always updating. Okay, you're in row 9. I'm going to update my formula to indicate row 9. These are still flashing because I had copied it to my clipboard. If I press escape on my keyboard, it removes those items. So I'm going to be consistent and put that underline there. So on average, my employee here, Nancy, she averaged at $19,775 in sales over all her quarters. What I'd like to see now is, of all my East Regional salespeople, what percentage of sales did Nancy have versus Ann versus Martin and so on down the line? So I'm going to find out the percent of sales. Resize that a little bit. And just because this is in the way, I'm going to hide it. I can select it, right-click, choose Hide. Now it's out of our viewing area. So what's the formula for a percent? Well, I want to divide her totals, Nancy's totals, by the overall totals for all these quarters. What do we start every formula with? Always an equal sign. I'm going to divide her totals. So that we have the backslash is the symbol for division. The star is the symbol for multiplication, by the way, and of course you have the plus and the minus. Divided by the East totals, that's my formula. I'll press enter. So she's about 17%. I'm going to click the percent button up here on the home ribbon to format it as a percent. 17%. Well, I'd also like to see what ands are. And by the way, if you want to freeze pane so that you don't have to keep scrolling back and forth, you simply select the cell underneath and to the right of the items that you want to freeze, and then you find the freeze command, which is on the view ribbon, freeze panes, freeze top row, freeze column. If I choose freeze panes, it's just going to freeze above and next to what I selected. So now I can always see Nancy there on the left, and I've frozen that row too, so I can always see these labels as well. It makes it a lot easier to understand this spreadsheet. All right, so what do we have? We have Nancy's totals divided by all the totals. Let's see what happens when I autofill this down, when I copy it down. All right, 320%. Does that seem possible? Could Ann's numbers have been 320%? Let's see what that formula is. It's actually dividing Ann's totals now by Mary's totals. That is not what we want. Usually in Excel, this relative reference is pretty good. When I copy a formula from one place to the other, that's fine because I really do want it to copy relatively. Not in this situation. In this situation, I always want the denominator to be the totals for our East sale. So how do I fix this? I'm going to cancel this. In fact, I'm going to select these items and press delete. I need an absolute reference. No matter what, I want G8 to be the denominator. So I'll select that and I'll press F4 on my keyboard. Notice now I have dollar signs around my denominator. $G, $8. This is an absolute reference because it's saying no matter what, stick with column G and row 8 or cell G8. You could adjust this. Maybe you wanted just to stick with row 8, but you did want it to be able to move from column to column. You could just put a dollar sign next to 8 and have none next to the G. But this is what we want. That looks good. I'll press enter. Now let's copy that down and see what happens. 32%. That looks a little bit better. So this is G3 divided by G8. This is G4 divided by G8. All right, G5 divided by G8, and so on. Oops, I'll hit escape here. And so on down the line. We now have an absolute reference, which makes sure we're always going to have the right data. This is helping us to keep our data intact. Data integrity is what we're after. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other formulas that we can work with. I'm just going to click over here, and we'll go take a look at the formula wizard. We can either click this button right here, it's called the insert function, or we can go to the formulas ribbon, take a look at the breakout of the categories for our functions, or we can simply click on the insert function button. This launches a dialog box for us where we could do a search. Well, what are we after here? Maybe I want to concatenate some items. When I hit enter, it says, okay, well, we got a couple different things. We recommend for you the concatenate function. And it tells you, okay, you can join several text strings into one text string. Here's the syntax. You could even go get more help regarding that. Or date returns the number that represents the date in Microsoft Excel's date time code. All right. Or if I didn't like that, I could always take a look at this down arrow and see my most recently used functions. I could go right to lookup and reference functions. We've got the H lookup function here, the V lookup,